What is the biggest adult tantrum you've ever witnessed? At film school, we had a teacher that was a little too full of himself. We were going to learn how to analyse and review a movie in one of his classes, and he made a huge mistake by choosing one of his own movies for us to work with. That didn't go well, since the aforementioned movie was well, to put it nicely, a steaming pile of shit. Well, we did our work, and we all put some very well-founded and well-worded criticism in our works and handed our stuff over, while mentally doing the sign of a cross. We knew that it wasn't going to go down well. The next time we had a lesson with that teacher, he proceeded to have a full-blown mega meltdown in front of the whole class, to the point where he literally started tearing up our reviews and tossing them all over the room. Then he practically ran out of the room while raging, screaming and crying. We didn't hear anything for the next couple of days, while the managing director and the leadership looked into the case. Then we were told that he'd been fired on the spot after raging and screaming at the managing director after our class. It turned out that the man had a severe drinking problem, and the management was already getting ready to pull the trigger on him. Our reviews were just the famous straw that broke the camel's back. If he thought asking a class full of students to review his movie was a good idea, it's no surprise he had a drinking problem. An older woman, probably 70-ish, travelling with her even older husband, sitting in front of me on a plane. She ordered an alcoholic drink. When the flight attendant bought her drink, she demanded her card back and started ranting and raving, calling the flight attendant a thief. It went on and on and on, and at one point she even started crying. The thing is, the flight attendant hadn't even asked for payment yet, and definitely hadn't taken her card anywhere. This poor flight attendant had been the most patient person on earth. She handled it with so much grace. Eventually, the flight attendant found the screaming woman's card on the floor under her seat where she'd apparently dropped it. She did apologise, somewhat sheepishly, and was very quiet for the rest of the flight. Meanwhile, the husband never acknowledged the situation at all, just sat there placidly while his wife screamed her head off. It sounds like it isn't the first time he's been present for one of her meltdowns. Poor guy. I used to work at a deli, and we ran out of a certain kind of ham. A customer, who looked like an evil Ned Flanders, requested said ham. I explained the situation. He turned an alarming shade of purple and, in full shaky voice, screamed at me, "You've ruined my Labour Day!" It was right before Labour Day. Then he stormed off, slamming his shopping cart into several other customers in the process. Chill dude, that one. I have no idea what Labour Day is, but it must be like a blowjob on Christmas morning for this guy. Someone relates to this story in the comments. I had a similar situation happen to me when I was working at Chipotle when I was 16. We were out of steak for a few minutes while our cook was cutting it up, and just my luck, an impatient father rolled through with his family and ordered steak. I told him it was going to be a few minutes, but we could get the rest of his stuff on his burrito, and he started yelling, "What do you mean, it's dinner time?" Followed by another, "It's dinner time!" Safe to say, his wife got onto him and he ended up eating in his truck while the rest of them sat inside. I mean, I get it, but dinner time can wait a few minutes. It sounds like he was just waiting to explode at anyone about anything. This happened to me many years ago. A lady came in who was very rude from the start. I got rattled and made a mistake or two, pissing her off further. As she left, I said, "Have a nice day." She was incandescent with rage. She whirled around and bellowed, "I will not have a nice day! I will not!" Then stormed out the door. Thing is, they're double doors, and we used to keep one locked because the wind would blow it open otherwise. So she slammed into the locked door, then grabbed it and tried to wrench it open. I was legit worried she'd do damage. She flailed her tiny arms around and screamed profanity at the heavens before shoving her way through the other door. It was pretty amazing. Then have a positively loathsome day, ma'am. When I worked retail, a customer approached my checkout and I said, "Hey, did you find everything okay?" He threw his items on my counter and ignored me. I rang him up, then he demanded I call my manager. My manager comes over and talks to him and he leaves. the manager proceeds to tell me that this guy was offended because I didn't say good morning to him. Then a few days later, I'm pulled into the office by a different manager because the same guy called corporate and reported me for not saying good morning to him. Does this guy think he needs to be told to have a good morning to actually have a good morning? How can anyone be so offended by that? There is a comment to this which I quite like though. I'm so glad my manager backs his own staff. I work in a Wetherspoons in a small tourist town, so some customers can be rough as f*** and others can be entitled pricks. One guy shouted and made my friend cry and run off at the end of last summer. I told him to stop shouting and leave because there was no way I or anyone else was going to serve him anything, never mind alcohol. He told me that I was in fact going to serve him, to which I replied, "No, I am not, so you can f*** off," and I served someone else. The manager sees my friend crying and comes out, and the customer sees the manager and points at me and says, He told me to f*** off." And my boss looks at him and says, "Why haven't you then? Go on, off you f***." Amazing. And do you know why he was shouting? Because the pub was rammed and he had to wait in line. That was it. Some people are just pricks. Well, he didn't get served at all, so I hope it was worth it. My retail hell adult tantrum story involves a woman who tried to return an alarm clock that we did not carry or sell. She did have a receipt for an alarm clock. It was not the alarm clock she brought in. Cue screaming about how she has a receipt and how she definitely bought this here. I did my best to try and treat her complaint seriously and show sympathy while not refunding her any money. I promised to have the owner look into it. She left the receipt and the alarm clock, which she was now calling that piece of shit, and left to wait for us to contact her. This was in the olden days when we kept paper copies of every credit card transaction. I sifted through some old receipts until I found one from an alarm clock she purchased, followed by a receipt from her returning said alarm clock 2 days later, which was about a month prior to her second return. I looked it up, and the alarm clock she brought in was a free gift from a bank. I called her the next day to relay all of this information. She replied, "You know what? The world is full of mysteries and I am willing to let this one go." Wow, how noble of her. I witnessed a man board an airplane drunk and quickly fall asleep. At the point they announced we'd be landing soon, he woke up and asked the flight attendant for coffee. She said, "Sorry, no, too late, we're about to land." And he lost his marbles, swearing at her about needing coffee and calling her names the entire rest of the flight. When we landed and pulled up to the gate, the captain asked everyone to stay seated and the local police department boarded and escorted him away. He acted very confused about why in the world he was in trouble. Yeah, it's almost like his actions have consequences. Please tell me you've seen the video where a woman is drunk and riding her electric suitcase away from the cops. A woman forgot her discount voucher and decided the best way to introduce this issue was to say, "I've forgotten my voucher. What are you going to do about it?" In spite of the voucher clearly saying it needs to be present on purchase, I do actually have some discretion in what to do if someone forgets it. For my regulars, who were polite, I'd just simply apply it anyway. For her, I made her what I thought was a decent alternative offer. She pays full price now, but if she brings the voucher within the next 2 weeks, I'll refund the difference and make a note of that on her receipt, so if she returns when I'm not in, she'll still get that. She did not agree that that was a decent alternative offer. She literally stamped over to the door and said, "I'll leave if you don't honour it in full." I was done with her by this point, so just said, "Okay," and watched her storm out. Or at least presumably intend to storm out, because what she actually did was forget the door opens inwards and not outwards and slam into it instead. That was all for a voucher that she would have saved about £2.50 on a £50 order. I hope that the idea of getting £2.50 off was worth her dignity. It really baffles me that people think the best way to get what they want is by being assholes. Okay, last story. I was out with the neighbour's mum and her daughter. She was maybe 4, I was like 5. She would have tantrums often. Her mum tried various things, but none worked. So one day at the mall, the kid threw a massive, on-the-ground screaming tantrum over something. So, Mum, a larger grown adult woman, lays down beside her daughter and threw one too, just like her daughter. The mum laid on her belly and screamed, "I don't like your tantrums, I want you to stop. You are embarrassing. Why won't you stop? Why wouldn't you stop?" She kicked her legs and rolled about. The daughter stopped her tantrum, tried to get her mum to stop, and was suitably embarrassed. She tried to calm her mum down. She promised to never have a tantrum again. She begged. Her mum continued for a bit, and then listened to her daughter and stopped. The daughter never had one again. Sure, the daughter deserved that, but I feel like you were unnecessary collateral damage here. Couldn't she have chosen to do that when she was out with just her daughter? Thank you for listening and sticking it out while I have a horrible cold. If you've ever been witness to an embarrassing adult tantrum, please leave a comment. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you've enjoyed this, and I'll see you in the next one.